play this. The Legend of Zelda. One of the most iconic gaming franchises of all time. So iconic, if you asked a 6-year-old what it was, or if you asked a 100-year-old what it was, they could probably tell you. I actually remember growing up, and before school, my sister would wake me up, and we would go and we'd play Twilight Princess on the big screen downstairs. And, well, I didn't really play. I was holding the Player 2 controller while she played, and I kind of thought I was playing. I mean, technically speaking, I didn't actually finish the game, but regardless, I knew that I was 100% sold on it as a franchise from that moment. I wanted more, so I went back and I got Wind Waker for the GameCube, and I loved it. I played through a lot of it. I got to about the Triforce piece, and then I guess I never technically got to the end of the game, but I loved it. In fact, for the longest time, I even cited this as my favorite one of the franchise, even after I played Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, which I didn't actually get to the end of those. And scene. This was a dramatic recreation of exactly what was going through my brain when I realized that Tears of the Kingdom is coming out in a matter of a couple months from now, and I realized I had never finished any Zelda game. That's not true. I've completed one, and it was Skyward Sword. And here I was calling myself a fan of the franchise. For years and years and years, I've always said, like, oh, I don't really get into Call of Duty, but I really do love Legend of Zelda. And yet, I had never finished any of the mainline games except for one. The one that everyone says is the worst game in the entire series. So I needed to remedy that, and I needed to remedy it within a couple months. So I played through every single one of the 3D Zelda games, at least in the mainline series, in 2 months. Now for some of you, it may not seem like a big task to complete 6 games in a couple months. And for those of you who don't think that that's a lot, congratulations on your graduation from 8th grade. High school, it's going to be great. Look forward to it. I had to basically give up all of my free time to achieve this goal, and it didn't seem right to just do it and leave it at that. So here I am today to talk about each of these games, because let me tell you, I have opinions on these things, and those opinions may surprise you. And I'm going to give you a review for every single one of those games, including Tears of the Kingdom. So before we dive straight into the series, let me break down exactly what 6 games these are and why it is these 6, because there are a lot of Zelda games. I don't actually know how many there are, but there's a bunch that are 2D or 2.5D. There's some that are part of the mainline story, some of that aren't. I'm talking about the big 6, now the big 7, which is Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask. Yeah, and I see I'm such a big fan. Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild, and now Tears of the Kingdom as well. Effectively, everyone in the fan base has kind of come to terms with the fact that these are sort of the core Zelda games, and then there are additional Zelda games on top of this as well, which are also good, I hear. I don't know, I haven't beat those ones either, okay? Maybe next year. But for now, I'm here to talk about all the games that I did play. And I'm going to talk about these in a very strange order. I'm going to call this Brian's Zelda Machete order. To start with the first game in the series, so I started with Ocarina of Time. Then I went to play my favorite game in the series, Wind Waker. Then I went to play the most recent game in the series, follow me here, Breath of the Wild. And then I waited for the airplane to go by. Then I went to play Breath of the Wild, which, hear me out, Tears of the Kingdom seemed a lot like Breath of the Wild, so I didn't want to be bored of it right before that game came out. That's why I pushed that one closer to the front. And then I went back and I did all of the other games that were missing in that lineup there, namely Majora's Mask, Skyward Sword, and then Twilight Princess. And then I did Tears of the Kingdom right after that. Now I know this order seems a little psychotic, but this is just how my brain works, okay? I don't know what to tell you. I shouldn't have even done this in the first place, but here I am, starting right off here with Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. You've probably heard of this one. That's where this bad boy comes from. It's probably the most famous game. They say if you live by an airport, you should make videos. Probably the most famous, most iconic game in the series. It's also the first one. It's the game that really, to this day, people cite as their favorite game of all time. So what I did was I booted up my 3DS and I wanted to play the 3DS version, and I just lost interest so fast. And I realized, I'm like, no, the game is fine, but I have no connection to it. This tiny little screen is just not doing it for me. So I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I went to the Wii U Virtual Console, and they have a port of the Nintendo 64 version of the game, and the whole game was like, it was like seeing color for the first time. It was just, I totally understood the love and the appeal of the game all of a sudden. That game is meant to be played on a big screen. If you haven't played it before, the 3DS is a fine way to like feel the game, but you won't feel the soul of the game. It won't feel right to play. But playing it on the Virtual Console, if you don't have access to a 64, which I do not, I would say is a pretty dang good way to do it. So anyway, I start playing the game. I get through it, and let me tell you, that game is really good. This just in, Ocarina of Time is a good game, but a lot of people don't really talk about what sucks about that game, and I want to start there. Let's start. Yeah, you know what? Let's start on a negative note, shall we? So, Ocarina of Time is really well structured in how you kind of jump from being child Link to adult Link. You're traveling through time through the entire game, and it's really cool to kind of have that two different sides to the story. It really adds some momentum to it. Where it starts to have trouble is that because at the time, I guess as game developers, they didn't feel the need to really break down for you what you were supposed to do next. I found myself stumped a lot. So here, quick story. I went back after this airplane. I guess 3 o'clock is airplane time. Nobody told me. So I went into the Goron Temple, or whatever it's called. I needed to get the armor that allows you to be fire resistant. And I didn't know where to get that. But then I remembered, oh wait, when I was Child Link, I saw that there was that armor for sale. When I went to go buy it, I realized I didn't have enough rupees. And so I said, hold on, I have a full wallet though. Oh, you need to have the bigger wallets in the game to progress. I didn't know that. That's interesting. And so I went through the side quest to get enough rupees. So this took hours. So I collected all these rupees. I got a big enough wallet to hold all the rupees I needed, or at least what I thought I needed to buy this tunic. I stroll up to the place, finally hours of work later, with now a full wallet full of rupees so I can buy the Goron tunic as Child Link, and they say, no. And I went, what? And the game tells you, no, you can't buy this tunic because it's only wearable by an adult, you stupid idiot kid. Oh no, what you have to do is you have to blow up the Goron who is going in a circle in the future, and then answer some of his questions, and he'll just give you a Goron tunic. And I was just flabbergasted. But anyway, all of that to say, Ocarina of Time is a phenomenal game. It really is. I really enjoy that spirit of adventure. It's so hard to capture that in a game. So many games in the modern day are trying to capture that by trying to make the world more open, more things that you can do. But there's something about how compact of a sandbox Ocarina of Time is to play in that it just feels like you're going on this grand adventure, and the world is steadily getting more and more big. And every time you think you've seen the end of the the world, it just expands more and more. And it is a truly magical experience. It really just made me excited to play the other ones. And its only biggest downfall is that it's kind of outdated in terms of telling the player what you should do. I don't need you to hold my hand, but in order to progress, if I found what I think is a perfectly reasonable way to beat your little puzzle here by getting the Goron tunic, their game design is outdated. But the game itself is still phenomenal, and it still holds up, even as someone who has no nostalgia for the game. Like I said, my first game was Twilight Princess. So I didn't even play this game until it was probably the third game in the series that I played. And so I didn't even have that core nostalgia factor for it, but it still holds up. The music, oh my gosh, the music in that game is incredible. I cannot stress that enough. The ending of the game is totally underrated. People will fixate on the adventure part. I know I do, but when the ending of that game comes around and you watch Navi fly off while you're in the Temple of Time as if like your job here is done. I'm getting chills just thinking about it, and seeing all like the people that you helped around Hyrule like dancing and celebrating. It's so cliche, but it's so classic. So just to sum up, if you haven't played it, please play Ocarina of Time. It's kind of old school in terms of its progression and what it wants you to do. Maybe if I didn't put myself in such a strict timeline of how many games I needed to get through in such a short amount of time, then I wouldn't have had such a problem with this. So all in all, I loved it. I don't know, it's probably like a 7 or 8 out of 10 game. Please play it. It's so good. So let's move on to the next game that I played. This one was interesting. Wind Waker. Which, this was my first love, really, of any video game, I think. I called it my favorite game, potentially of all time, for the longest time, even though I never finished it, which is kind of a weird thing to do, by the way. This is how big of a fan of Wind Waker I was. I was willing to buy a Wii U and get this just so I could get this version of the gamepad, because they released Wind Waker in HD on there. So I was really excited to play this game again. And I hate to say I was disappointed. Not with the style of the game. Aesthetically, I still think it might be my favorite. And story-wise, it's really charming and it's really doing a lot. Combat-wise, no one talks about how good the combat in this game feels. It's not hard. Let me tell you, it's not hard. The combat is easy, but damn, it feels good. You're slashing a guy, and then it gives you a combo so you can spin behind him and slash him from behind. It is so cool, man. And the way that you have this huge ocean to explore, and it plays that triumphant music as you're sailing across the sea. Oh, it feels so great. I don't know what happened, because it is literally a 10 out of 10. I would not change a single thing through the first, 3 dungeons or whatever of the game. And then you realize that there's only, 4 or 5 dungeons in the entire game. It feels like you're doing the setup dungeons. You're learning about the world. You're learning about the combat. You're slowly piecing together what makes this game good. And then the game puts you on this long fetch quest to get the pieces of the Triforce. Initially, you're like, okay, this is kind of a long side quest, but I can't wait to get back to those dungeons. It did hint that there's a big dungeon up top and a big dungeon down bottom of the map. And I believed it. I was so excited to get there. I was plowing through those Triforce pieces, and they have a couple mini dungeons in there, but I was so excited to get to those other dungeons. And then there weren't other dungeons. At least not like the original ones. The other dungeons that are in the game were just almost placeholders. They were short little challenges. You're over and done with them in 10 minutes. I'm sorry. damn cat hair. Even when he's not in my video, he is sabotaging me actively. Even after finishing this, what feels like a side quest of the game, you're ready for it to just unlock and for the rest of the world to open up for you and to see, oh, you have 5 more dungeons that you got to get through. But no, that challenge is the end of the game, unfortunately. There's a little bit more past that. It's not bad what you do beyond that point, but unlike Ocarina of Time, where the world just feels like it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, Wind Waker has the opposite problem. It gets smaller as you go. It goes smaller and smaller and smaller. And I did really love a lot of the... I love that the first dungeon in the game is like a stealth dungeon. You don't even have your sword. That's really cool. And then you come back when you're strong and you just get to destroy all the enemies that were got in the back of your brain the whole time. It's such a cool way to do that. I really enjoyed this game until it completely dropped off. I genuinely was saying, why do people not cite this as their favorite one for the longest time? I'm like, I've always said it's my favorite, and people go, oh yeah, it's all right. And they're right, unfortunately. It's really not that great after you get past the opening. Like, it doesn't even have a satisfying ending. Like, there's a big twist, but it from that point on, you're just kind of finishing it off. So I don't really know what else to say, unfortunately. It drops the ball so hard that it's hard to be excited about it. So I'm what a game that could have been a 10 probably ends up being about maybe a 6 out of 10 for me. Huge disappointment. Anyway, let's move on to this one. The one you've probably heard of, Breath of the Wild. I'll tell you something. I was not the biggest fan on my initial playthrough of it, actually. I liked it. It really feels like, wow, you could go to Ganon's castle right away. I don't want to hear that. I want to slowly get stronger and stronger so that I feel strong enough to fight Ganon. And the game does do that. You have to beat all of the divine beasts in the game before you get to Ganon. And divine beasts, by the way, if you're not familiar, they're basically the 4 main dungeons of the game before you get to the final 5th dungeon. The world is beautiful in Breath of the Wild. I really enjoy walking around that world. I think it's a little bit too open, and there's not really a lot going on in the world. Now, you should also know something about me. I don't really like open world games. I know it's weird. I'm making a video about the Legend of Zelda series, one of the most iconic series for having an open world. I remember playing Fallout 3. At first I thought, oh, this is going to be so cool. I'm going to go explore the world. And someone said, hey, you can blow up this city if you just follow me. And I said, okay, cool, let's blow up the city. I blew up the city, and with it, I also blew up my map marker on what I was supposed to do next. So the game said, find your dad, which is the object of the game. So I was wandering around the world forever and ever, amen. And eventually had to just give up. That's how Breath of the Wild feels from the get-go, to be honest. Like, it kind of quietly leads you in a direction, but if you don't tell me what to do, I'm not going to play for very long. I'm going to walk around a little bit, and I'll go, I'd rather play something a little bit more focused, something that pushes me in the right direction. So that's always been my biggest problem with Breath of the Wild. I also am not big on the combat in the game. It's just not... It doesn't feel good to me. Like, it feels like it's full creativity, yes, but what's there doesn't feel tight. You know, I like systems in the game that I don't have to invent. I don't have to be like, oh, I could drop a box on this guy's head and then I could spring over and fly over this person or whatever. I am not interested in that. I want a game where it has really tight controls, really tight combat mechanics, and then bam, it's over. Also, weapon decreasing as it's going. Hate it. Come on. Who likes it? I thought it was done much better than I thought it would in Breath of the Wild, but every time they're like, oh, your Master Sword's not charged anymore. Shut up, okay? No one cares. No one wants their Master Sword, the sword that frickin' seals Ganon in his tomb, to be this weak baby ass sword that has to, oh, you killed 3 enemies? Well, now you can't use it. It's the Master Sword. What are you talking about? I've been so negative this video. I'm so sorry. Let's talk about positives. Breath of the Wild. Obviously, the game is gorgeous. And character-wise, I think it's a delight to meet all of these different NPCs in these different places. And I love when they have weird quests for you. You know, when they have they're like, hey, can you jump off a waterfall with a spear? And I'm like, yes, I can. Oh, my nose, man. But let's be realistic here. To me, this doesn't feel like an adventure. You know, I was previously using the phrase, it doesn't feel like a Zelda game. And I don't think that's fair, because it does feel like a Zelda game. You know, it does do everything that a Zelda game should do. You know, there are dungeons, but so it doesn't feel like a Zelda game, but it doesn't feel like a Zelda adventure. Like reading Treasure Island for the first time when you're like 8. You know, it's that, like, who knows what this world has to offer. And when it's not all given to you at once, it's so much more rewarding. So I did enjoy it. It's a nice time. But controversially, I think it's probably one of my lower tiers on the Zelda game. Now, a low tier Zelda game is high tier anything else game. Let's be real here. It is not, it's just not for me. You know, I hate to say it. So, oh yeah, an airplane. I need to record things away from the airport, man. But moving right on along, let's go ahead and get into kind of what I thought was going to be the cleanup. Because I was like, okay, I've played the first game, played my favorite, played the new game. What more is there to get out of this series? Let's go ahead and let's do the knockoff Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask. Let's get that out of the way. What in the world is that game? I think I love it. I think it's fantastic. To be honest, it's always been my least favorite. The core mechanic in the game has never appealed to me. Even right now, it doesn't really appeal to me. The idea of doing the same day over and over and over, well, same 3 days over and over and over again. That sounds exhausting, and it puts such a firm timeline on everything in the game. And yet, it's like really good. It's actually so different from all the other Zelda games in such a great way. Oh my gosh, I was so impressed when I started playing it, and I started to realize what it is that people love about this game. It's not just that it's the weird kid. It's all goth and cool. I really think it's a story of like grief in a weird way. It's also one of the only games that's a sequel, except for Tears of the Kingdom, of course. Ocarina of Time has this reputation of being this incredible adventure that you go on, and then Majora's Mask is weird, and then you move on, right? No. Majora's Mask is this beautiful, told story. I feel like I need to sit down with it for like a couple years to really fully, entirely grasp even what the game is about, because it feels so purposeful. It doesn't feel like it's trying to just capitalize on the success of Ocarina of Time. It's like, no, we want to do something entirely different, yet using more or less the same mechanics. The game opens in a strange way. It opens with you in distress, sleeping on a horse, and then getting jumped in the forest, and then being transformed into a hideous creature, which is kind of surprising. Most Zelda games tend to start in the happy place, right? They tend to start you, oh, look, he's a little fairy boy waking up in the forest, or, oh, he's been asleep for a long time. He's just waking up here, or, he's on this outset island and he's just waking up to, like, it's always in this, like, nice, peaceful place. But this game starts with you in immediate trouble. It's following the events of the first game, and bam, you're already toast. How's this for an opening? You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you? What a crazy, scary thing for a stranger to tell you, especially the happy mask salesman. It's all so strange. And as it progresses, it's not that the world is completely resetting, it's that you get to, like, learn more about it, and there's just so much more to chew on. I actually felt terrible because of how fast I played through this game, because I was just having so much fun getting through it and seeing all that there is to see, that I didn't feel like I had enough time to really stop and smell the roses of the game, because I think that game is fantastic. It does lack a little bit in terms of dungeon design, but in world design, it's pretty damn good. The only thing I really wasn't a big fan of was the character that's with you, who's basically like a knockoff Navi. They're like, okay, Navi, if you don't know, is the fairy in Ocarina of Time. You should know that. Come on, get yourself together. The fairy that it gives you in this game is Navi, but sassy. So it's still kind of hard for me to put into words exactly what it is that makes Majora's Mask so special. But it's not just because it's cool and edgy. It's because it's got something to say. And I think it's going to say something different to different people. I mean, you can look up any amount of video essays just about how much, to some people, this is their favorite game of all time. And I totally understand it. So, if you're looking for a strong recommendation from me, you're going to find it right there in Majora's Mask. I do think you need to play Ocarina of Time to really appreciate Majora's Mask, because you need to see the happy before you get to the sad, but it is so worthwhile. If you've played Ocarina of Time and you've kind of pushed Majora's Mask off to the side because you've always seen it as kind of like it's kind of the half-baked sequel, you don't know what you're missing. Please go play it. You won't regret it. All right. Let's move on to that one, shall we? Let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is Skyward Sword. This felt like the first game that I owned, if that makes sense. Like, when I was a kid, I got my copy of Wind Waker, but that was kind of an old game at that point. And like I said, we had Twilight Princess, but my sister was the one who really played it. So when Skyward Sword released for the Wii, I wanted that game for me. I think I got it for Christmas, and I'm the one who played it, and it was my game. So I actually really loved it when I first played it. I only learned about the terrible reception later on in life, and I was kind of surprised. I was like, I thought this one was pretty cool. Sure, the swinging the sword mechanic is not killer, but it's really not bad. I'm not the biggest fan of motion controls, and I don't think most people are. So in the new version, you can actually do it without motion controls, and I would actually really highly recommend doing that. It takes a long time to get used to kind of the mechanics because you're using joysticks instead of the swinging, which is what it's designed for. But trust me, it pays off. When you get good at it, then you don't have to swing your controller around like a freaking lunatic. We'll talk about Twilight Princess later. I've talked a lot about what did I used to think about this game? What did I used to love it. I used to yada yada. What did I think of it now? Is the hate for it justified? No. It is really not that bad of a game. Now, is it as good as the other 4 games that I've talked about? Not even close. I'll take the first half of Wind Waker any day over all of Skyward Sword. It seems to have an identity problem. It feels like it wants to have an open world, but at the same time, maybe technically they couldn't figure out how to do it, so they gave you kind of like a good hub world to live in, but the hub world doesn't really expand. You just go to different sky islands, so it's like a very small little place and separated into chunks. That doesn't feel very good. But aesthetically and artistically, I think that game is great. I mean, it's, the pastel sort of look for the game is such a breath of fresh air. It's almost a melancholic sort of game. I don't know if other people read into it that way, but when I'm playing this game, it feels like I'm watching a Don Bluth film. It feels kind of sorrowful, like, to go through, even though it's generally a very positive story. Here's the thing. People don't respect Groose enough. My guy Groose. Groose the Groosinator, that guy. He's my boy. And just on him alone, this game can stand. But I would say every other character, it's one of my least favorite versions of them, including Zelda. Yes, controversial, I know. And the villain of this game is, like, awful. He looks like a Tumblr boy. Like, who did this character design? Maybe it was just the times or where we were at. Maybe Sherlock was too popular or something like that. And they're like, we got to appeal to a very specific internet crowd with this bad guy. I don't know what the hell they were going for, but they did not succeed in making him feel like a threat. It just felt like a chore every time I was fighting him, even though he's like a really kind of a challenging fight, at least challenging for someone who's not very good at video games, like myself. He sucks. I hate him. So you've got this beautiful game with a subpar hub world and a terrible villain. And then you've got a really good, compelling story behind it. Because it's not like a lot of the other Zelda games where you're trying to achieve like a very obvious goal. You're slowly piecing together, oh, this is about like the founding of Hyrule. This is the earliest game in the series. But you don't really, at least I didn't fully internalize that until deep into the game. And I thought that was neat. And I also enjoyed that this game was on Switch, so I could play it in bed. Because another big problem that I have with the game, it's too damn long, man. Once you finish going through all these cool aesthetic worlds, the game stops giving you cool aesthetic worlds and makes you go back through all those worlds again, doing different things. Okay, do I need to explain why that sucks? Let me give you the short version of why that sucks. Already been there. Okay? I have no interest in that. Get that out of my face. And that's half the game. So, yes, that does suck. And there's a lot of things about the game that does suck. So maybe it does live up to the hate now that I'm thinking about it. But, the internet is always going to blow things out of proportion. And like I said earlier, the worst Zelda game is still a great game. If this was the only Zelda game made, I would love it. But it's got to be compared to so many other great games in the series. So, I hate to say it, Skyward Sword, you're not getting a rose from me. And honestly, I was thinking about this because I've had so much fun doing this over a much longer period of time, mind you. I might want to play through all these games again. But then the idea of having to play through all of Skyward Sword again just fills me with dread. I don't want to do it. So I guess I kind of wouldn't recommend you play this one unless you're just really hankering for some more Zelda. Leave it for last. If you need that last fix, then it's worth it. That's what I'll say. Whew. Man, I need a break, but I feel like if I take a break now, I may not finish this. Also, these aren't even my lights. These are my girlfriend's lights. So, she's going to need them, and she gets back soon. So, I should probably just keep going, huh? Alright, so, how do I want to say this? Twilight Princess is my favorite Zelda game. I didn't know it till I played it, but without a doubt, Twilight Princess is my favorite. It does everything that I want a Zelda game to do. It has little pieces from all of the other games, and each of those pieces comes together in just the most grand adventure of all. It starts you off in a pretty calm village, wouldn't you know it? But that is uprooted really, really quickly, and I think that's a great idea. Like, let's get moving out of this place, and it starts taking you into this world. But they, instead of having the Gorons be just like this dumb rock people who just roll around all the time, they made them sumo wrestlers. Well, that's really cool. And the Zora people, who are like the fish people, in this game they feel like royalty. They feel like, wow, these are like really important people. And just like in Ocarina of Time, when you think you've seen every type of environment that they might throw at you, it throws you into a snowy dungeon that is not like, oh, it's like an ice cave. No, you are in a mansion in that used to be a stronghold for the Hyrule warriors that has been taken over by a Yeti couple. And I mean, like, they're the people you're working with, these giant abominable snow people, and you are helping them make soup and exploring this mansion. It's one of the most creative, interesting dungeons Zelda has ever done, period. And it's got my favorite item in the game, this weird Beyblade that you can like roll around on. So freaking cool. All of the side quests in the game, I just wanted to do them all. I wanted to find all of the Poes, which are like these like ghost creatures that have been in other Zelda games previously, but they fit the most in this world because this world is so like gothic inspired, and your sidekick is Midna, who is the best. Midna is just this impish, fun, whimsical person who slowly becomes more serious as the game goes on, because you start to learn more and more about her and where she comes from. And whoo, baby, it is so good. It does. Here is my things that I look for in a Zelda game. Number 1, adventure. Tick. Number 2, it needs to have its own identity. It can't just be doing the same thing as another game. Tick. It can't, the combat has to feel good in the game. Tick. And most importantly, it can't just be about the adventure. It has to have heart. It does everything right. With one notable exception, motion controls. It was right when this wasn't a game that was designed for motion controls. It was that they made it for the GameCube, and they said, okay, well, we're pumping out this Wii thing out here soon. We should probably put it on there. And what are people going to expect when you've got like the nunchuck and the controller? You're going to expect to swing your sword. And so they made it pretty much mandatory to, I mean, I think it is literally mandatory to actually swing your sword around. And it's not like it's the worst thing in the world, but it does make it harder to sit down and play for long periods of time. And now you can't even really get access to a GameCube copy unless you go through nefarious means. So, you know, I played through it on the Wii, and worse than the motion controls that it forces you to do, there's this really obnoxious Navi cursor that is always on the screen. And it is so annoying because it makes Navi sounds as it moves across the screen, and it's always on the screen. And so you're like, okay, well, can't you turn that off? Yes. But you know what you give up if you turn that off? The one thing that the Wii does best. It's not this. It's being able to aim at the screen. So, what I found myself doing was, if I saw a section that was going to require some precision with the bow and arrow, I would turn on that annoying ass cursor just so I could aim with the bow and arrow, and then I would turn it off. And I would turn it on and turn it off. Talk about a weird ass monkey's paw. It's like, oh, you can have some of the most fun bow and arrow combat in the game, but you have to have the terrible cursor. Or don't have the cursor and you have to aim with the joystick, which is just not it, man. It's not fun at all. Those are my gripes. Every other part of that game, I love. I love how it unfolds. I love the character design, which I know some of the characters, people are like, that's a bit weird. I like it. Keep them weird. Keep my Zelda characters as weird little guys. Even, what's his name? Oku? Keep him that way. That's my son. So this game is kind of hard not to give a 10 out of 10 to. Now, the version I played is a 9 out of 10 because you have to use the motion controls and you have the cursor issue. But I'm going to say it. That is a perfect game. Minus those weird things that they pushed for the Wii to have. Man, I really would not change a thing. That can be your first Zelda game, by the way. I want to play it again. Right now. I would literally stop this video and play it right now if I didn't have other things to do. Like, for example, finish the damn video. I've always loved The Legend of Zelda. I really always have. And getting through this actually really felt weirdly meaningful to me. It's like I got to experience a part of my childhood that I never got to see. I'm getting sappy about this. I don't know why, but so I just wanted to say all of this before getting into Tears of the Kingdom, that if there is something on your to-do list that you've been meaning to do, that is even something that you want to do, that you've been just like putting off for reason of like, I'll do it someday. Someday has to come at some point. So do it. It'll be worth it. Is that sappy enough? But this might not even make the final video. Let's get past that. Let's talk about what's really important. This is the game that I was most worried about because I kind of knew at least I had an anticipation of what I was going to be getting into. And a lot of the reception for Tears of the Kingdom went a lot between, is it basically like a glorified DLC, or is it going to be Breath of the Wild 2? Neither of those things, seemed interesting to me. I don't want to go back through the same world, but I picked up that game, and immediately I had no memory of this place.
I have no memory of this place.
I love Tears of the Kingdom. This game is not Breath of the Wild 2 any more than Majora's Mask is Ocarina of Time 2. They're similar. They utilize a lot of the same assets, maybe. For one, Tears of the Kingdom goes out of its way to give you direction. Honestly, you can't throw a stick without running into someone who has something for you to do. And having come off of all these games where I was pushing through, I can't tell you how nice it felt to see a side quest and go and not feel guilty about doing it. Just being like, oh yeah, that'll be fun. I'll go do that. And I got to experience what everyone else was saying they experienced in Breath of the Wild, which is you start going to one thing and then you get sidetracked doing another thing, you get sidetracked. There is a different momentum to the game. Sure, like the building, the mechanics, that sort of stuff is cool, but the way that the game flows is so different. And I love that they have the underworld section. It's a little samey, I'll give you that. It's not as unique as the overworld. And the Sky Islands, same sort of thing. Kind of samey. But I lit up the entire underground section, and I'm not even afraid to say it. I spent so many hours in that game. Oh my gosh. I plowed through the entire thing, and it was so great. to get to play this game and to be with the hype with everyone. And I got to go to like the subreddit and watch what people were discovering and go, oh, maybe I can find that in my game. And like the whole caves that are like not the fully underground but just like the normal caves are really cool to just like stumble across. And all the cool little secrets. And oh, I want to build up this town over here, or like I want to help, like I want to help with all these different things. I felt so good playing it, and it really did. As much as it does the same thing where it's like you could go to the final boss whenever you want, but this game doesn't go out of its way to tell you exactly where the final boss is or what you should expect when you get there. And yeah, I thought it was great. I thought the final boss was great. The game's hard as hell to play. It is not. This should not be your first Zelda game. It is tough. It is like, at least for someone who's not very good at games like myself, this is a brutal one to just hop into. So, all of this to say, I think that the building mechanic is cool. I like the rewind mechanic. It's cool. And it really does make the world feel exciting. Every single time I saw that damn flagpole guy who said, help me put up this sign, I stopped and helped him. I think most people stopped building for that guy, or they like came up with like a design and they just did that for every single one. I was like, no, I'm going to help each one of him individually because it'll be worth it in the end. I don't even think I found all of them. I think there's like a special reward for doing that. I didn't do a lot of the stuff in the game. In fact, I barely did any combat at all because similar to, it's basically the same combat system as Breath of the Wild, and I don't care about that. But the game says, oh, you don't care about that? Okay. You don't have to handle it too much. And you know what was most special about this game to me? Because I had just finished playing through the other big 6 games, and I got to the end, completing this game, the first time that I, took the time to pick it up and play through it over the course of, I think it probably took me at least a month, maybe 2 to play through, but I knew I was going to finish it. And I knew I wasn't going to leave anything left on the table. I was going to have exactly as much fun as I wanted to have with the game, and I was going to fight the boss, and I was going to be able to put that one away for the books. And I did. And I'm very glad I did, because these games are really special. There's a reason that they have such a unique love, or people have such a unique love for this series. And it's because these games are truly worth your time. So, first of all, if you've never played a Zelda game, why the hell are you watching this video? If you haven't played a Zelda game, you have to subscribe to this channel. I'm not a big gamer myself. I am just a believer that art is important. And I think that we should all have opinions about the art that we engage with. And that's why I'm doing this. So no, this isn't going to become a gaming channel. I need to talk about this. I need to talk about how I feel about these games. Otherwise, I'm going to go freaking crazy. Oh, one last plane before we wrap this up, huh? Why don't we play a little... So, let's go ahead and wrap this up. If I was going to put them in a tier list, which, come on. I know that's the trend, but we don't need to do that. But if we're going to do it, let's start at the bottom, right? Worst game in the mainline series, definitely Skyward Sword. Right above that, this is where it starts to get tough. Breath of the Wild. Oh, don't hurt me. Man, all these games are so good. So don't get mad at me when I say Ocarina of Time. Oh my gosh, I am not gaining friends. Okay, above Ocarina of Time, I'm going to put Tears of the Kingdom, and then Majora's Mask and Twilight Princess. Oh, I forgot about Wind Waker. Put Wind Waker second from the bottom. Oof. How the Mighty Have Fallen. That was my favorite game, and now I'm putting it second. I didn't even remember I needed to put it in the damn list. It's a shame. Well, anyway, this is the definitive list. If you disagree with me, legally you have to subscribe to the channel. Sorry. Thank you guys. I love you. See you in the next one.